Most of it is because they get put on these waiting lists. And what do you think about these waiting lists, Bob?
I have a fairly personal experience about this, and I am certainly no authority on the rate or veterans issues, but my personal experience with one man that I knew in Texas coming back from Vietnam was that the number of people that have post-traumatic whatever syndrome that is,
PTS,
are not able to get the help they need from the VA, and so most doctors just throw a bunch of drugs at them and say, go home and call me in the morning. This man has been on big doses of drugs for the past 40 years, and his life is wasted. Now, I'm not trying to point blame. I'm just saying there is a big problem, and I think the country needs to get after that problem. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are listening that can associate with this particular problem. And this problem also goes toward the gun violence that the Obama administration always points to. That we have so many murders in this country, or we have so many people die by guns in this country. Well, that's part of the statistic. It's not people that are going out, running around robbing banks and killing each other. It's suicides that are happening that we could probably prevent a lot of.
Right. And to the gun violence issue, these individuals are obviously troubled, and they are going to commit suicide. If they're at that point in their lives, they're going to commit suicide whether they use a gun or car, drugs. They're in trouble. And we have abrogated our responsibilities to these individuals. And when you put it in total perspective, the average salary of a soldier today is around $36,000 a year, and yet we expect them to give their lives.
Well, that goes hand in hand with this is Obamacare, because it aggravates the VA and all of us in all of our health care situations. I'm 65, you're 65, so we're both on Medicare now. And our producer is telling us we have a break. Is that right? Okay. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Thank you.
And I understand that I probably had some problems with my microphone, so hopefully you can hear me better now. Mr. Technician Man?
I'm not hearing him at all.
Still working on it.
Still working on it. Okay. Well, if you can't hear me, then I'll try to scream at you, yell at you. We are here with Bob Ruckman and Bob Berry, myself, and we are talking about how the war on freedom is alive and well in our country, and particularly in Park County. So Bob is running through the next three segments that we're going to have in this war on freedom. The first, next Saturday, is going to deal with life. Then we're going to deal with liberty, and then with the pursuit of happiness. So we're to Section 2, Liberty. How are we going to do that?
Liberty is about education, Common Core. And for example, in Common Core, there's no more cursive writing. And that's a serious issue, because if you go into the bank, if you're going into the bank and you want to sign a signature card,
yeah,
for a savings account, a checking account, you want to sign a loan document, it has to be in cursive.
Right.
You can't go in and print it. It's not legal. So if you look at these things, we're not teaching that today.
No.
Data gathering, schools, doctors' offices, social media, and it's very likely that the right to work, and that'll be a topic that we're going to get into in the pursuit of happiness. In Obamacare, there are provisions that all medical people are going to have to join a union.
Right.
That's going to raise our costs substantially.
Well,
and that's the other one is denying our citizens the right to bear arms. And we have a hapless government. agencies, EPA, overextending their authority, trying to repossess land in Wyoming up the whole city of Riverton and the outlying areas. The IRS is under investigation for tremendous wrongdoing and politicization of that organization. We have layers and layers and layers of administrative, even in the state government. So we're talking about federal, take it down to the state, and then in our county and city governments, we have layers and layers of administrative people. And there's going to come a time with budget crunches that we're not going to be able to afford these. Right. And we also can't afford. What do you think about the regulations that we have today?
Well, when people go to the polls and vote, they say, okay, good, I'm going to vote for Governor Meade. Good. Okay, fine. Well, in doing that, you're not just voting for Governor Meade. You are voting for hundreds of people that he appoints. And those people are on boards and committees, and they control a lot of your money. And they also control a lot of the regulations that affect you every day. And those regulations are mounting and mounting and mounting. At the federal level, you have people that are appointed by President Obama or whoever.
President Bush, it doesn't matter.
President Bush, yeah. And do you understand, Wyoming, that when you go to the polls, you have to be educated about this stuff because it's affecting you every day. So we want to hear from you on how that is affecting you and what you are going to do about it. The purpose of this show is to get you involved. It's one thing to educate you, but it's another thing for you to do something. All the education in the world doesn't do any good unless you get off of the sofa and do something today. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go run for office, but it does mean do something every day.
It can be as simple as registering to vote.
Correct.
Because I'm not sure of the numbers, but what are the numbers off the top of your head of people that actually are voting for elected officials or initiatives as compared to the total population? And I believe it's only around 36%.
There is going to be a register to vote event on November 14th in Powell at St. Barbara's. It's going to be from 6 to 7:30. There's going to be food there, juice and cookies. Okay. But we would like for everybody, we would like to pack that place. So if you are at all interested in doing something to try to save Park County, save Wyoming, save this country, then be at St. Barbara's on November 14th from 6 to 7:30 in Powell. There are a couple of precinct people there that are really concerned about the voting habits of that area and the whole area. We noticed that whenever we have been involved with elections, that not enough people get out and vote, and that is one of your best avenues to do something. And,
yes, I found the number. I had them turned around. It's actually 40% of Wyoming that is not registered to vote, and 60% are registered.
If you look on our Facebook page, which is Ring the Bell in Park County, look up Just Desserts, DESSERTS, and that's the name of the event at St. Barbara's on the 14th of November. And again, we have a Facebook page, and we have an email address, which is rtbnow@zoho.com. We can't do anything with this show unless you participate. So please get involved and let us know what you think.
Another topic, Bob, is on Liberty is overcompensating government intrusion in the new cars.
Yeah.
New cars are going to be self-driving, self-parking, self-braking, all controlled by computer systems. And this is all linked back to a project that was done at Dartmouth College, probably started 15 years ago. And that's where the Real ID came out of. And there's systems already in place in the major cities. If you're driving up, for example, Charleston Street in Las Vegas, major thoroughfare, 6 lanes, they actually have put in controls so that if you're driving up that street and you have one of the newer model cars, they can turn your car off and stop you.
And
so how would you like to be stopped just without?
Right. Oh, my car died.
Yes.
It just stopped and somebody runs into the rear end. How's that going to work?
Well, right, because some of them are going to have the control in it, and some will not have.
We have all these grand ideas, and a lot of them have good premise, but then you have unintended consequences. So I wonder how many of you folks out there know that this is in the works. How many people of you know what Real ID is? We have been talking about Real ID for 4 years, and it's here, and it's real, and the government can track you, and they are gathering data in Utah. I don't remember.
That's the NSA center that's outside of Utah.
And we're going to be we're going to be talking about those issues as well in more detail in the future. So, a little bit more about Common Core. We have this issue hot and heavy in Park County right now. And just briefly, some of the statistics that are involved with Common Core about the states that are involved and either getting into it or not getting into it.
Is we have, I believe it's 19 states that are now pushing back or have totally rejected Common Core.
And Wyoming is not one of them.
No, Wyoming is not one of them, and it's strictly a money issue.
Yeah.
The non-elected appointed board for education in Wyoming realizes that they're going to lose a couple of $100 million, and that's even their accountants' numbers.
Right.
They're not necessarily real numbers.
Right.
So they're willing to give up your children's education over dollars.
Yeah.
And what do you think about this? Even Washington, can you believe this? What do you think about Washington is now stepping up and they're voting out Common Core?
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. But more to the point, the most amazing thing to me is that are you not concerned about what's happening in Park County with our school board, with our superintendent, with our state superintendent of schools, who just seem to me to be swallowing this stuff hook, line, and sinker. Most of the states that have rejected or are in the process of rejecting Common Core are either in the South, Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida. Even Indiana is rejecting it. The state of Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. And yet, what's Wyoming doing? They're pushing right along and staying with it. Utah, Arizona, Alaska, Nebraska, Kansas, all of these states are saying no. Even the state of Washington, for crying out loud, is rejecting Common Core. But yet, why? And I think you listeners need to ask your school boards, why are we going down this road? Because it's going to, do you want your children to grow up and not be able to write their name on a contract or driver's license application or something? Because you got to do it. It has happened at banks here locally where somebody went in with their kids to sign up for an account.
Was a passbook savings account?
Yeah. And they couldn't sign their names. So therefore they could not have the account. Am I right?
Well, they actually were able to get the account because the mother helped the child write their name, and we're talking high school now. Mm-hmm. I still consider them children. Had to help them write their name in cursive to be able to sign up for the account.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty disturbing.
So I think we're coming up on a break now.
We're going to have another break, commercials. Well, thank you and welcome back. Hopefully you are all hearing us. As I understand it, we had some really bad technical problems, but I can hear myself now. I can hear my producer. I can hear Bob. So if you didn't get all the other stuff, then
we'll cover it again.
Yeah, we'll cover it again in the next couple of weeks.
Because we're going to go over each of these issues in depth. Today we're just trying to pick your interest.
Right.
We'd like everybody here, please go to the Facebook page and also send an email to rtbnow@zoho.com. That's ZOHO.com.
We're only as good as you participate in this.
Under liberty, there's another issue that's of prime importance to Wyoming people. Should be for everybody, but specifically here, and that's the Second Amendment. And Obama has pushed this. They've lied about the statistics. For example, the 35,000 people that are killed a year, FBI statistics with firearms. What they don't include is the 25,000. I mean, they are including. They should be removing it. Is the 25,000 that are suicides?
Right. Yeah.
And
those numbers are stacked all the time.
And in the state of Wyoming, we have a legislature that has been very ambivalent about the actual Second Amendment, because we put these gun-free zones. And in my opinion, and in research that's been done, you put gun-free zone on a business, a school, a college, all you're doing is saying, please come here, because nobody is going to stop you from being here.
That's right.
What do you think about these gun-free zones?
It just blows my mind. Where have all of the mass murders happened? None of them have happened where in a place where people are packing. They only happen where there are defenseless, innocent people that are just slaughtered. Yeah. And we have, and I have talked to very important legislators in this state that believe that's how it should be. Their children are going around with people that can protect them that have guns, but public schools, no, we can't do that. So, yeah, I have a problem with that.
I've gone to some of the superintendents, and actually I know of teachers and principals that have guns in their classrooms, that have firearms, and they hide it because they know the statistics, and they know the risk that they'll probably be terminated.
This is like going in the backcountry of Yellowstone without my 44, thinking, you know what, it's a gun-free zone, that grizzly bear will not attack me. Or anywhere in the national forest where, you are not at the top of the food chain out in the woods, and you need protection sometimes. Now, that doesn't mean you go out there and look to gun something down, but just for common sense, it makes no common sense to do.
One of the things we'd like to do here is anybody that's listening to the show this morning, and we thank you for that. We know this is the first couple of weeks of the show. We'd like you to weigh in on this issue on the Facebook page. We'd also like you to weigh in on this issue on the email about experiences that you might have had relative to losing your Second Amendment rights. We think that this is a real big issue. The Facebook page is Ring the Bell in Park County, and you can email us at rtbnow@zoho.com. We really would like to have that participation. We have had a number of people that have written in with commentary that has given us ammunition to talk about.
And also, you need to go to the meetings. The school board meetings here in Cody, I don't know about Powell, but the school board meetings here in Cody, Park 6, happen on the third Tuesday of the month at 919 Cody Avenue, second floor.
And that's at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. And make your voice heard. City officials, school officials, legislators do want to hear from you, because I hear from councilmen that say, you know what, I don't hear from anybody. I heard from one person in a year. That's not good, because this is your country. This is your county. This is your town. And don't expect somebody else to pick up the slack and say, oh, well, I went and voted. Well, going and voting is a good thing. That is your duty. But do something along with it and participate, because if you don't participate, it doesn't matter how you voted.
Well, in relative to the Second Amendment, there are cities now. What do you think about these cities that are imposing a 2 cents per round tax on some ammunition. If it's a pistol ammunition, revolver ammunition, it's even higher. I've heard reports that it's going to be as high as 10 cents a round.
Well, I talked about this last week. The latest National Rifle Association periodical called Freedom has in there an article about the city of Seattle, who's going to charge you $25 per gun tax, 5 cents per round of large rounds, and 2 cents per round of .22. And my question then is, how are they going to enforce that? And how's that going to work? Do you want somebody, the sheriff's department in Park County, coming to your house and saying, how many guns you got? How many .22 rounds you got? I doubt that's going to happen, but it's happening. And 50 years ago, if I had said this is happening anywhere in the country, people would have gone, oh, you are absolutely more out of your mind than we think you really are.
Bob, it will happen. New York has just recently gone along with an Obama deal with the UN, where they're going to allow UN law enforcement officers to come in and enforce law under international law. And so it won't be your sheriff or your police department that comes to your house to find the firearm that you're supposed to register for the tax.
It's going to be your doctor.
It'll be a UN or it'll be a doctor. Now,
right. As I understand it, and if you're out there and you know more about this, please let us know. But as I understand it, especially under Obamacare, your doctor is bound to ask you. Now, you are not bound to answer. You don't have to say, yes, I have a .22 and a .45, but they're asking the questions. Are you comfortable with that? I'm not.
I'm not. And what if you have a discussion with your pastor?
Correct.
Your priest? They're also included in this.
Yep.
So if you go in and you have a confession, you talk to one of your ministerial people, and they ask you the question offhand.
Right.
Do you have a firearm? Do you have guns? The federal government under Obamacare can now force them to divulge that information.
Right. Yeah. So
we like people to weigh in on this because I don't think many people understand the full extent of that law. I was one of the weird people that actually read 1,700 pages of it. Didn't understand all of it, so I got people to help me understand that. But it's onerous. It truly is a bad law. The next segment is going to be the pursuit of happiness. That has to do with private property ownership, jobs without unions. We have the rule of law, which under our constitutional form of government, what do you think about the UN now exerting their influence that we're supposed to be subservient to international courts and not our own courts? Or in Florida and in Michigan, there are Sharia law courts now.
Correct.
That have been recognized by our courts.
Yeah. Well,
what do you think of that?
One thing that just shocked me, I have a lot to do with Yellowstone National Park because of doing tours there, having a book about it and such. So I've been paying attention to Yellowstone for the past 35 years. One of the things that really shocked me was when they shut down or locked us out of Yellowstone Park 2 years ago. How many people saw on the news, all emblazoned on the Enterprise and New York Times, that the UN peacekeeping forces are the people that escorted people out of Yellowstone Park? Do you know that? There was a sign, and I took a picture of it, and if you want to see it, I can show it to you on Facebook. At Midway Geyser Basin, there was a sign that said, future bridge, it needs to be rebuilt across the Firehole River because it's in horrible shape. Future bridge to be financed partly by Unilink. Now, Unilink is an arm of the United Nations. Guess what? I went out there this summer to do some more picture taking in that area. The sign is gone.
Yellowstone National Park, and actually all of our parks, with the bill that Nixon did many, many decades ago, ceded a lot of this authority on a graduated basis over to the United Nations. There were signs 15 years ago in the Great Smokies when Brenda and I were out there. I was working in Nashville. all over that said these are United Nations administered and managed world park
World
facilities.
Heritage Sites. Yeah.
And I was astounded
how do you
to
like
see
that? How do you like that your national park is supposedly under the auspices of the United Nations?
And our tax dollars pay for it.
And this under the pursuit of happiness and this subject drives us to the right to own private property. Because as far as I'm concerned, whenever Rob and I go to the park, I say, isn't it nice that we have this park? This is our park. Nobody else's park. It's just yours and mine today. And I know that's a flippant way to do it, but you have that right too. You can drive into the East Gate and say, wow, this is my park. Well, is that true anymore? And when you go and you look at your cows on your ranch or on your farm, and you look out there and you look at all the sweat equity that your great-grandparents had in it, your grandparents had. I still have a quarter of land in North Dakota that belonged to my grandfather. And you don't actually own the land. You are a steward of that land. But that stewardship is being taken away from us. Do you know that?
I don't know that people are focusing on it. The other thing that concerns me greatly is if you own a piece of property and you're making the payments on it to the bank or to the finance company or to a relative, you are not allowed to build a building without getting building permits. It's taxes. You're not allowed to subdivide because of there's building boards and commissions in almost every county. They're called different things, state to state to state. They control what you can build, how you can build it. They control the zoning. And the fact is, do you really own that property? You're making the payments on it. But if you can't use that property for your benefit and your family's benefit, who really owns it?
Then where's the pursuit of happiness?
Right.
Okay, welcome back to Ring the Bell with Bob Ruckman and Bob Berry. We were talking about the pursuit of happiness and private property rights. One thing that I think a lot of people in Wyoming don't get or forget, and I'm not ragging on people, but you have to get involved with things. And the people in Wyoming have had it really good for a very long time as far as being, quote, good Republicans. And I'm not ragging on the Republican Party. I'm not ragging on the Democrat Party. What I am ragging on is people's seemingly head in the sand attitude. It doesn't bother me, so therefore it's not a problem. Well, it does bother me. So
there's a couple of issues there. With you, we talk about the pursuit of happiness, and right to work. And we actually had a wonderful win, in Kentucky, a conservative candidate who the Republicans said they didn't want to win. The Democrats, McAuliffe,
really didn't want to win.
Spent millions of dollars. I believe one of the other Democrats there, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, they said he spent between $2 and $3 million for this gentleman to lose in that race, and he won by 12. It was 10 or 12%, which is phenomenal. First time Virginia's ever had a Republican governor.
Virginia or Kentucky?
Kentucky.
Yeah.
Excuse me. For a long time.
Yeah.
But we need to look at this. In Montana, unions disallow you the freedom to be able to find jobs and do jobs.
And when you think of unions, you think of Pennsylvania and New York, not Montana.
Well, look at every state, Colorado, Montana, Nevada. In Nevada, I'll give you a real quick example. If you're an electrician and you need to run a line, but there's sheetrock leaning against the wall where you need to run that line, you can't move that sheet of sheetrock. You have to wait until one of the union employees that handle sheetrock comes to move it so that you can do your work. This is absolutely real.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law's dad is an electrician. He waited 4 hours for a job that should have taken him 15 minutes, and they billed for that time. So, you wonder about these things. The other thing is IMF, International Monetary Fund, elimination of cash. And there have
How
been,
close are we to that?
yeah. What do you think of the now the top 4 banks in the United States? They've already done it in Europe. Citibank and Chase have already implemented this policy in Europe of not accepting cash, which in the Constitution
It's
is guaranteed that we can use legal tender to pay any and all debts.
Right.
They're not accepting cash for house payments.
But credit
Auto
cards are so
loans?
easy, Bob. So
They're not
easy.
even going to accept cash for credit card payments. So what do you think about this? That now the banks are colluding.
Well, then we'll just do trades. Yeah, how's that going to work out for you? Because that's going to be a felony if you barter.
That's
How many
correct.
people understand that the monetary system, which you are used to taking a dollar bill out of your pocket, paying for a Coke, is going to go away? And more government intrusion into your life. I mean, that is every aspect of your life that is coming down the pike. And we can't just say, oh, we're in Wyoming, we're a long way away, it doesn't matter. It does matter, and it's coming to your town, and it's coming for you and your children.
We have the big banks already here. Let's be honest about it. Bank of America has ATMs already in the state. We have Wells Fargo in the state of Wyoming. We're blessed that we have a lot of small banks. That was because Wyoming was a unit bank state.
What does that mean?
For unit bank state is that you can only have a main bank with a few branches within your town.
Yeah.
Or your county. You weren't allowed to have a bank in Casper and a bank in Sheridan and one in Jackson, and those laws were recently changed so that now the national banks can come in. We're also looking at the rule of law of a redefinition of our style of government.
Correct.
What do you think? Do you want to be held to a court in The Hague? The Hague, however you want to pronounce it. It depends.
They
on,
are a bunch of hogs, but it
yeah.
is Hague.
International
law.
If you get called into court and you had to go defend yourself there or just plead guilty, which are you going to do?
I'll plead guilty.
Would you? I don't think you would.
No, I wouldn't. No, but I see the how many people are out there giving up their liberty for their security, and we're doing that as a nation. We're doing that as a state. What happens anytime the feds come down with us, like the thing with the EPA in Riverton?
Right.
Where did we go? Oh, we run to the federal court. We must go to the federal court. No, we don't. We just tell them no. And we have a governor and a legislature that stands up and says no. And guess what? When we say no, the feds almost always invariably back off.
Well, they refused to even defend in Prince Mac versus the USA on the Brady bill. The federal government defended that one, but the precedence that they used was the EPA versus New Jersey, EPA versus Maryland, and the federal government refused to even defend on those. And that was the precedent that allowed them to overturn the Brady bill.
Yeah.
What do you think about these transgender bathrooms?
Isn't that the greatest thing in the history of the world? I think we should have those.
It's interesting that was really pushed, millions of dollars in Houston, and how many people overturned that percentage-wise?
I don't know. 60%. 60%.
Over 60% voted against it. Same thing in Ohio, legalizing marijuana.
Oh.
That was turned down.
Okay.
What do you think? Because Wyoming's
I just got too much information here.
Wyoming's actually been talking about doing a big study to follow Colorado.
So the transgender bathrooms were turned down in San Francisco? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
No? Okay. All right. Well, let's get off transgender bathrooms because that's not a burning issue anyway. I want to know how many people think that what Mr. Obama said on the telly yesterday about the pipeline, that is the most egregious bunch of malarkey I have ever heard in my life. that the pipeline now is not in our best national interests.
If we go back in
I am
history, Bob,
speechless.
and look at quite some time ago, my dad worked in Casper, out of Midwest, and there was the Teapot Dome scandal.
Right.
And where they took oil through directional drilling and were robbing our national stores, and that oil was put there in case of a national emergency. They actually were pumping oil into those formations back in those days. My dad worked on those projects. It takes a lot of time to put oil into production. And if we don't drill and we don't have a pipeline to be able to transport that oil, we're probably talking 3 to 5 years to have full production. And I used to work, that was one of my careers, was working in the oil industry. What do you think about this whole issue? And especially Warren Buffett has spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying against the Keystone Pipeline.
Why is that? Why is that? Why did he do that?
That was the question I was going to ask you,
Well,
sir.
I have the answer. Because Mr. Buffett transported a whole lot of oil with his railroads. And Mr. Buffett supports Mr. Obama. And Mr. Obama supports Mr. Buffett. So I think that it's about money. It's all about money.
And it's about buying politicians.
Yeah. And we have to change politicians regularly. And people ask me all the time, who do you like for president? You know what? I do like people for president, but I like more for, we need,
Just go on to the
okay,
next.
well,
Bob, we're about to the point where we need to.
Yeah, and I'm getting so many notes here that I can't read and I don't understand.
Here's the dialogue I want to repeat again. We did at the opening. What are you concerned with? Is there anything that keeps you up at night? What issues are you willing to take your time, raise your voice, write a letter, spend your money, or vote for or against? We'd like to hear from you. Again, that's Ring the Bell in Park County on our Facebook page, and RTB Now at Zoho.com. That's RTB NOW at Zoho, ZOHO.com. And I think, Bob, you've got some closing statements that you'd like to go over.
Yeah. We read 2 Chronicles 7 at the beginning of this, and I don't want you to forget this, because what this says is that the nation of Israel had fallen away from God's precepts, and he wasn't happy with that. And so I want to repeat that one more time. If I shut up heaven that there is no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Our land needs healing. And like I have said many times before, we do not have a political problem. We do not have an economic problem. We have a spiritual problem. We are a Christian nation. And I don't care how many people want to argue that point. And I do care. But I want people to argue with me, and let's have that out. We were established as a Christian nation by Christian people, and it is time for the silent majority of good people to start making their voices heard, because if you're not making your voice heard, you're going to lose it. So we can heal our land if we get on our knees and start praying about it. There are so many of you out there that listen that I know have the best interests of this place at heart. And I've talked to a lot of you, and you are good people. But there are a lot of people that don't think like you do. I had somebody tell me years ago, and he was from, I don't know, California or somewhere. I don't want to beat up on California, but I was speaking for the Constitution and the American way of life, and he said, "Bob, I just don't believe the way you believe." And you know what? That man has just as much protection under the Constitution as I do. And you know what? A whole lot of those people are coming to Wyoming. and they're voting and they're getting involved. And too many other people that are good, patriotic Christian people are not saying anything. And you have to. You just have to. So
I had thank you. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. And I guess we've come to the end of our segment for this. And Bob, I want to thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. We'll close with this blessing. May those that love us, and that those that do not love us, may God turn their hearts. If he does not turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles, so that we know them by their limping. So thank you so much for being there. And be with us next Saturday. It's going to be Bob Berry and Richard George. And we're going to talk about life, and we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty and go deep on all those things. So thanks for listening.
You have been listening